Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. Here you will get your weekly digest of all things property and AI, presented by me, Mal McCallion, and my co-host, Matt Goddard. Hi, Matt. How you doing?
Hey, Mal. Great to see you.
Likewise. So listen, lots to get through as ever. So let's get stuck into our property news. Right, this week's property news, we've got a sort of a few bits about portals. Now, regular listeners will know there's always stuff about portals, but this week there's the big news about Zoopla, which we covered off last week, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Thursday afternoon, in fact.
We did an emergency podcast for those that have not gone back and listened to the emergency podcast. It's only about 10 minutes long. But yes, we dive deep into that particular situation. But interestingly, there's a lot more going on with competition in the space over here in the UK and elsewhere. And one of the things that's happening over in the States is CoStar, who own On the Market over here in the UK. They've started trialing something called vendor paid advertising in South California. So Matt, you know a lot about the international scene, particularly you've been spending some time and working with clients over in Australia. Vendor paid's big over there, isn't it? What is it?
It's basically the go-to. So whenever you list your property, be it sales or leasing, you put in a certain amount of money. I remember when we launched with Mickham back in 2018, it probably would have been. People were regularly putting down 10 grand, Australian dollars. So a joke with my mum who lives in New Zealand is that's 50p, but probably on current conversion rates, more like 5 grand.
We're sorry to not see each other, those guys.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a go-to. If you want to market your property, then you'll pay money up front to do that. And it's astounding, actually. And I think I've regularly said it's why I think that the Australian New Zealand market is well ahead of us in terms of marketing, because of the fact that people are putting that money up front and the agent aren't having to think about how their cash flow is going and whether or not they might sell that property. Then you see these humongous advertising boards, which I was in Melbourne last month, and there was boards that are as big as the house, so sometimes displaying the characteristics that you normally see on a website or a portal just there in the street as you, in my sense, a gentle jog. In yours, it'd be probably a sprint, as I did a lap of the Melbourne suburbs. And it's, for me, it's led to things like floor plans, interactive walkthroughs, all these advancements that until COVID we didn't really have in Australia, because the vendors are paying for them. Then people are much quicker to adopt them.
So are those billboards outside the house, or are they like in the centre of
Yes. Like
really?
literally, if I'm not in Caldecott Road at the moment, but if I was in Caldecott Road back in Camberwell, my front wall would be a billboard as high as the house is.
Wow. Okay, that sounds interesting. So obviously, again, it's relatively niche in terms of geographical areas. I think Sweden's got a bit of it, Hemnet, which is the kind of right move of Sweden. But it seems now that Homes.com is trialing it out in the States. Do you reckon it might come here to the UK as well?
I think there's already an element of it. And speaking to various businesses, they have these sort of prestige packages, or even during COVID, looked at selling my house, and one of the agents that came round had in the back of the terms and conditions the fact that they were going to charge for floor plans and photos and various other things, until I quibbled over it and they said, yeah, strike a line through that. We'll cover that. So I think people
With that
are.
agent?
No, we didn't. I'm quite pleased I didn't mention the agents there, but there are people who do have those prestige packages who say, for this price, we will do a drone footage and social media advertising, which obviously I banged on about previously, but they do quite cleverly package them together because of the fact that they do, for their clients, get further exposure and obviously views of that property.
Yeah, so I've heard from Australian agents that essentially there is a little bit of a kind of begrudgment about the fact that they feel often that they're becoming a bit of the portal salespeople. So for realestate.com.au, that they will actually advertise now direct to the consumer, direct to the seller, and say, look, what you need to be doing with your 2,000 Aussie dollars is buying a big, massive featured property on realestate.com.au, because you will get X% more looks. And then the vendor goes to the agent and goes, why are you doing this? And then the agent has to like basically pay for this extra uplift. Is that something you've observed down there? Is that kind of a risk with the portals actually starting to drive this themselves, rather than it coming from these marketing packs that agents have done for a while?
So the piece down there that's been interesting is Campaign Tracker used to do a lot of the marketing spends, and it was a behemoth that did everything from printed to boards to right the way through to the trust account, which is what they call the client monies reconciliation. That got sold out to, I think it was Domain in the end. It was this sort of Zoopla equivalent portal. But where they've been encroaching is actually on.
Sorry,
What's
the
that?
CoStar are now trying to buy as well. Trying
Ah,
to
yes, good,
anyway.
good interjection. But they're actually encroaching, and we touched on this a few weeks back, onto the social media spend.
Mm.
And they've put into their terms and conditions that if you're going to do social media, you have to do it through the portal social media campaigns. And obviously, the piece we've talked about there previously with artificial intelligence is that when you do that, you are effectively giving up your domain authority. And by being the one that is publishing that content first and being front and center and that first publisher first piece, you are going to be dragging people towards your domain as opposed to pushing them off to domain, which is a little bit of a literal slip there, but I think you get point.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So I think that it is something that we've also seen with these kind of, with the Preston and his kind of sliders and different choices of, do you want to pay up front? Do you want to pay half up front and then a percentage on the end? Do you want to pay entirely a percentage? So I think that there's really interesting different ways of charging that are being experimented with and then that are coming through. And again, ideas being magpied from various other geographies. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that, because when REA Group were going to buy Rightmove in September last year, 2024, one of the things they pitched to the shareholders was, oh, we're going to bring vendor paid advertising over. You can learn from how we do it. And then Move's profits will go absolutely astronomically through the roof, even more than they are already. So it does feel like it's coming and
Yeah.
knocking on the door. And almost for an industry that is still only charging like 1% on average or 1.2 or 1.3 or whatever, compared to abroad where it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% in the States, this might actually be a reasonable way of actually upping the marketing game, right? And actually
Yeah.
making properties better advertised and sell for more potentially.
Yeah, and I think one thing we learned from Purple Bricks, and ignore the whole commisery piece, but people are willing to pay up front
Mm.
if it gets them what they're looking for. And I touched on it a couple of weeks back. My best mate back in Grimsby was trying to sell his house, and the agent had put it on social media. So we ran a quick campaign through Listing Logic, and suddenly he got more viewings, and he's now sold that property. So people are willing to put the hand in the pocket and pay, say, 100 quid, a few hundred quid to market their properties if they see those results.
Yeah, Andy Florence, who's the CoStar CEO, was on the investor call on Tuesday, I think this week or last week. And he said that the average is that when people are asked, how much would you pay for this? They say $500, which is
Oh,
like
wow.
150, 400 quid. So yeah, so that does feel like there's some potential over there. And I'm sure we will return to this as it gets ever closer. Again, homes.com or CoStar owning on the market over here in the UK. Perhaps we might see some trialing going on here too. So that's one area of portals that we wanted to just touch on. We also wanted to talk about Matterport and how that, again, owned by CoStar, another piece of their ever-growing jigsaw of services for the home moving public in various locations around the world. What's your take on Matterport and how its impact, or what its impact can be?
I think for me, there was an article in one of the Australian daily newspapers as well, property newspapers in there that said about trying to push this out onto individuals and getting them using Matterport. So you're just using your mobile phone and using their technology as opposed to trying to have to bring in home stages and all the normal overheads that come with that sort of thing. And I think it's going to infiltrate our daily lives a lot more and a lot sooner, especially with the advancements of artificial intelligence in terms of the home staging. But the Matterport piece is a really interesting play, isn't it?
Yeah, so just for those that aren't fully aware, so Matterport is essentially a sort of camera that enables you to take photos of the home and then it pieces them all together, creates a little doll's house, as I like to call it, of walkthroughs that you can go in 3D. And it's a really sophisticated piece of kit. There are other competitors out there, things like Giraffe and so on, and Made Snappy. But yes, it's a very sophisticated piece of kit. I know a lot of agents that use it and love it. What I found quite interesting was CoStar's desire to buy it, to acquire it. I think it was $1.6 billion or something. So
It's a lot of cash, isn't it?
yeah, no small change. And presumably because of the experience that is then going to allow people to have on their websites. So they do take over a domain, they've got on the market here in the UK. Let's say that obviously they've got homes.com over there. Let's not say they're going to get Zoopla over here because we don't. But if they exclusively provide your Matterport fun doll's house entertainment on their own websites, then that gives a richer destination for people to actually come and play around with properties rather than some of the more static stuff perhaps on REA Group or on Rightmove and so on. So I think it's an interesting play and it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. But it's fascinating to hear that they're actually using it in different ways over in Australia as well.
Yeah, it's different locations, isn't it? And it really will be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Final piece on our portal chums. There's an article from a company called Beagle, who's done some analysis on AI. And guess what? It's coming for AI is coming for portals, not estate agents, was the headline from last week. And this prop tech firm called Beagle, Beagel, they say, and it's quite a long white paper, but it's good. I read it in detail, and it's true. Essentially, what AI is really good at is data, which is what the portal.
It almost follows on from what you said at the end of, was it last week or on maybe even Thursday's podcast, where you feel like it almost felt like you were delivering a sermon on the data side of things.
Always
And
doing that.
yeah, we should have the ident this week being you in Trump in Pope approach. But
I am off to the
it,
Concorde later.
yes, exactly. I've not seen the film yet, but apparently it's very good. But it's I know Healy from the time at which he was trying to integrate Beagle with Reaper Foundations, and his white paper came a bit from the left field for me because I didn't expect it to be as nuanced as it was. But it absolutely follows on from what we've talked about before with the likes of Manus. Even this morning, actually, I was talking to somebody about the fact that we're going to be able to not just match our own CRM listings to applicants, but we're going to be able to match the whole of market listings to people. And the fact that AI is going to open up that opportunity for us.
Yeah, 100%. And again, without getting into my pulpit and starting to preach, I fundamentally agree. I think that this is the disruption that's coming for portals. To a greater or lesser extent, it will be welcomed, I think, by the agent community, particularly for the dominant portals, whichever country you happen to be in, because they're what one might call monopolistic charging over time has hurt a lot of agents, has hampered innovation in the sector, I think, considerably. So yes, I think it's going to be a really exciting space, and it is one that we are going to, I'm sure, come back to repeatedly.
Yes.
If only so, stand and start telling people what it's like week after week. Anyway, we will try and do some other things. Okay, talking of other things, did you see that segue? Did you?
Yes, very good.
Thanks. We want to talk about acquisitions because yet again, there's been another big old deal in the UK estate agency space where somebody has bought somebody for a lot of dough. Who is it?
So this one's Chancellor's being acquired by LRG, isn't it? The artist formerly known as Leaders Romans Group, or before
Indeed.
that, Romans. And what really intrigues me from two aspects on this one is there's some big players being acquired now.
Yeah.
We had KFH, which is what, 70 odd branches being acquired by Lomond. Now Chancellor's, which rough estimate 50 to 60 branches.
Yeah, so something of that ballpark, maybe a little bit less, but yeah, still huge.
Quite diverse locations, Chancellors, as well, isn't it? In London, Thames Valley, and Wales.
And called, yeah, England and whatever else they could think of. Yes.
It's just snapping up those acquisitions. But LRG really shifting through the gears and picking up some big old agencies with Sterling Ackroyd, Acorn, and now Chancellors. So that was one standout piece, just the fact that it's big agencies now being acquired, not with no due disrespect to people, but one or two office agencies or even some good ones, charters, thinking of them, who got picked up, and there were 15 offices by Lomond, I think 15 offices. These are now big players. It's one where you think the size of Foxtons, would they be acquired? And obviously Guy's doing a great job in there kicking that one on. But on the technology side of things, it intrigues me because KFH are using, I don't know if you heard of him, but there's a guy called Simon Whale who prior to Reapit used to
Simon
work.
Whale rings bells.
Yeah, no, he pops up here and there. But prior to working for Reapit, he worked for a company that sold Matchmaker, not a dating app, but as a state agency product. And that was what KFH were using prior to now migrating over to Reapit post Lomond acquisition. And now you've got Chancellors who also use Matchmaker. I think probably the only one that's left out there is Connell's Group who are using that. So there's these in-house, bought the developer rights, building our own application, are slowly being consumed by these new behemoths that are spinning out.
Yeah, and I guess that's great news for Reapit, right?
Yeah, I think so. But not maybe the project team might argue against that. So the people who look at the user figures.
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted.
I
Yeah,
think it
no,
counts as organic growth, doesn't it?
I'm sure it does. Depends if you're the account managers or the sales team, like business. Get on. So yeah, no, like you, I think it's just becoming so much more of a battleground for these larger agents. And I do wonder, obviously, there's a lot of money swirling around. And people are being invested in, Lomond's being invested in, LRG is being invested in, you've got Dexter's hoovering people up as well. So all of these companies have got to get the money from somewhere. So there's a lot of investment in them. And obviously, the end game is right. We build out and dominate, perhaps like Countrywide did under Harry Hill and Bob Scarf and so on, and dominate, and then we can do whatever we like with all the data and so on. So I think it's smart, but I do wonder where it's going to end because are they just now racing each other to buy these things up? 26 million for Chancellors feels in a market that's not brilliant, feels strong. And yeah, exactly. And all of these other ones are just being scooped up almost at eye-popping numbers. So obviously it's a land grab. They're trying to basically build that dominance through this period. And then when the dust settles in a couple of years' time, see who's left standing and everyone's pointing their guns at each other. But yeah, it just feels like there can't be room for all three of them to keep buying like this. Somebody's got.
I think if you take a step away, and this is difficult for you and I, especially with me being in the weeds as often I'm told, is look at something like veterinary, and you step away and look at these PE houses who invested in vet services, and you really only have Medivets who control four of the five vets on the high street or whatever it is. They absolutely dominate it. And the PE houses, the people in their ivory towers looking at the figures are probably thinking, we don't own 90% of the high street yet. And maybe, and I'm not calling this, but maybe one of Amelia buys LRG or Dexter's buys something else. Or it's similar to when Countrywide and Connells came together.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And like I said, I can't see kind of three of them carrying on slugging it out. So, like you, I think if I was looking around, I'd suggest that Lohman might quite fancy Dexter's in the end. If they can eat that whole, then that's game over for a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
when we did the management buyout at Repit, they actually, AKKR, who gave us the money, actually said that sometimes the smaller player is the one that buys the big one. And in that CRM space, it might have been us going off and buying Zoopla Property Group or Alto, and that's not a headline stealer, but it could easily be a Dexter's buying a Lohman.
You heard it here first. Another exclusive on the Property AI report.
Yeah.
By the way, just no, we're not going to go down that route.
You've done that stern face, which means this is going to be a bit clickbait, isn't it?
Damn, all my tricks. So yes, so again, like loads and loads going on every single week, we seem to get another acquisition. But yes, the acquisition of Chancellors, I am certain, has sent some shockwaves around the good people of Oxfordshire, the good agents of Oxfordshire. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they manage that too. Alrighty, we want to get on to Matt's favorite bit, which is all about CRMs, obviously. We have some news about Alto, and they've recruited a big hitter, haven't they, from Sage?
They have indeed. And I think there's a couple of times where big hitters have come into our industry. Let's ignore Countrywide for a moment. And when a big hitter came in there, but was it Kajute brought in somebody from Skype and now Alto. So the beast that's been spun back out of Zoopla has acquired this guy from Sage to head up their partnerships. And I know from a supplier point of view, partnerships with Alto have been a bit challenging to date. So it looks like he's come in with a view to boosting that side of the business.
Improving that. And I think that it's always been, for me, it's always been a bit short-sighted, the CRMs, just to ruthlessly charge suppliers for access to data and things like that, and almost self-defeating, because the more you can spider out and build these partnerships and all that sort of stuff, then surely the stronger you are and the better the agent relationships are too. So yeah, like you say, it's nice that they've, can we say finally got around to considering partnerships? Because yeah, I think it'll do them the world of good. And obviously, again, that they are doubling down on themselves as a separate entity to the wider Zoopla group or houseful.
No, absolutely. And spinning on from that, and a nice segue is the fact that Zapier has launched its agentic piece, which it does get there eventually, don't worry, with people like Desres, Street, Repit, with their OpenAIs, have got some of them published apps within the Zapier marketplace, others not so much. I think Rex is a published app, which means that they're going to be able to now, with Zapier just earlier this week launching its various agentic apps, means that people are going to be able to actually start focusing and utilizing some of this technology we've been speaking about.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, well done, Rex. Well done, anybody who's already in there. I think this again is going to be such a differentiator, is how well these systems, CRM systems, and others actually integrate with others. So with Zapier in this particular instance, with Rex being there on the ground, I think is going to be hugely beneficial to all their agents, because they're going to start to feel the benefit of all this AI much more quickly, and it's going to be a real differentiator for them. And I think it's going to be, it's going to separate out those that are, yes, at the cutting edge with those that are perhaps lagging quite far behind.
And for those that don't know, and so Zapier is a no-code/low-code tool that people can use to basically glue their various technology products together. And I'm actually here in Dubai at the moment and working with an agency who's connected Repeat up to Zapier, and then that opens up a plethora of integrations that you can utilize from WhatsApp messaging and various no-code tools right the way through to actually writing your own code in there. So the fact that I feel like we're on the precipice with agentic where no one's quite seen it in action yet. And for people like Zapier, and there's another one later in the show notes where we're really on that cutting edge, and I think about to start seeing real world usage.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I saw something that said that this time next year, almost all of us will have an agentic AI colleague or co-worker.
Yes.
And I think that's that, all of these little plugins, as you say, and various others, that's the start. That's connecting the kind of infrastructure. And then we're going to be deploying these things and they're going to be
I'm
incredible.
just going to have a little Mal just sat on my shoulder doing what I need him to do.
Who knows? I am actually an AI avatar here right now.
I've heard it
I'm not
said.
even talking, not even talking to you anymore. Can't bother. All right, that is our property news. We have edged gently into tech news, and now we will dive fully in for AI and tech news. All right, first up, hot off the press this morning, we have OpenAI is reversing out of saying it's going to become a for-profit. So very brief background to a rather complex series of events. So now OpenAI runs ChatGPT. Okay, so ChatGPT is the best known of all of the AI agents. And what it does is you ask it questions, it will give you answers. It's amazing. OpenAI has been accepting tons and tons. It got 40 billion beginning of this year, which was the largest ever private investment in a company or investment in a private company. But that was on the understanding and a very explicit understanding by the end of 2025, it would change from its current position, which is as a not-for-profit entity into a for-profit entity so that those investing, including SoftBank, are able to make some money from their lovely investment. Now, this morning, along the way, OpenAI has found itself under attack from the likes of Elon Musk, who was actually one of the co-founders of OpenAI. Hope you're keeping up. He fell out with the current OpenAI guys, set up his own AI called XAI and Grok, and is now been basically trying to derail OpenAI's progress ever since. So he took him to court to say, you can't just change into a for-profit when you're a non-profit. And then loads of other people also came out and said, you can't just change into a for-profit from non-profit. And in the end, OpenAI today has accepted that is the case. It cannot and it will not. It's really difficult to know where this goes from here because a lot of that investment was predicated on the fact that it would change into a for-profit. And if it's not, does that mean that all of that money disappears? And then what does that mean for OpenAI? Is it just going to fall apart?
I think the key thing with this is there's just a shed load of cash floating around, isn't there? You touched on Thursday, is Silver Lake just cashing in on Zoopla to throw money at AI? See, I do listen back to the podcast, and it's like that's just 500 million they're just looking to cash in and throw it. And every time we also talked about the guy from Colombia who's done the cheating app, and he's raised billions, and there's just this sheer volume of money coming into it is like. I feel like they can change from not for profit to profit to not to profit and just flip flop this cash backwards and forwards. But it was an interesting tactic by Musk, wasn't it? It really is a devious little so. By putting them into a court case that's not going to be seen until spring next year and challenging it, and even he offered to buy it, didn't he? He offered to buy the non-profit piece that was then providing the code to the profit piece of the business.
Yeah.
And it feels like school ground tit for tat, but on a global, like this is a future scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it is really. Yeah, I think that he's obviously going to be happy because this is Elon Musk, because he's managed to derail what was a very specific plan to get this up. But I can't imagine that OpenAI has given it up without having a plan B. Because you don't just decide, oh, do you know what, today, let's give this up pre-court case, pre-anything. I imagine that there's going to be some kind of cunning workaround. But yeah.
I don't know. I often wake up in the morning and think, do you know what, today I'm going to be not for profit. And then
Yeah,
I'll be like, I'll be profit today.
Is that from your bed of millions of dollars that you lie in every day?
The one behind us, our penthouse suite in the South Bank.
Exactly right. So yeah, so I think this is obviously going to run and run. It's only just released today, but yes, we will find out more in the coming days, and no doubt she'll return to it at the opportune moment going forward in the property AI report. So next up on our AI tech news, we want to talk about some releases. Now, there's something quite amusing about Microsoft's Windows Recall product, isn't there, Matt?
Thank you. I thought you were going to nick my line there.
I
So
was.
Microsoft Recall has been recalled.
Hey, there it is.
So this was first released, I guess, a year ago, and the premise was that basically you're being watched
Hmm.
all the, not you, Mal, you're on a Mac, but me just now on my Windows laptop, which is great
Mhm.
for running Windows-based applications. Windows Recall was watching and seeing what I was doing, and for example, could if I was struggling to use PowerPoint and was looking for a particular, I don't know, GIF to drop into my presentation, Windows Recall could talk me through literally to pressing on the tab and then the button and then inserting and what I needed to insert. So a very advanced form of artificial intelligence monitoring, but initially there was a lot of concern. So just last week it's been recalled, as it were.
Yes, excellent. And yeah, this I think it reminds me of the privacy stuff that we always used to and throw our hands up about. Oh my God, they know everything about us. This is really bad. And now it's just, yeah, they know everything about us. And I think it's going to be exactly the same with this. It's going to be like, oh my God, they're watching us. Oh my God, it's just, yeah, they're watching us. But in return, we're getting some useful, funky features and all that sort of stuff. And yes, I can switch it off if I can find the button, but I can't be bothered to find the button. And by the way, it remembers where this button, that this thing is that I need to press that I'd forgotten about. So actually, it's really helpful. So yeah, I think there is that kind of fine line where people need to decide for themselves, actually, how much of this do you want? Because if you don't want
Mm,
the overlords at Microsoft watching your every move on your computer, then you probably want to turn this off. But if you want all the cool, funky features that come as part of having that particular thing happening, then you might want to leave it on and benefit from that. So yeah, just I think with everything AI, it's worth just knowing where your own personal boundaries are, because for a lot of people, they may be quite far over towards the protection side, which means, again, you won't necessarily get to play with all of the cool toys, but increasingly the conversation will start to disappear about that. So just be really clear in your own mind, right? Actually, I would rather not, or I'm quite happy to do it. And then just make sure that every app that you're opening is fulfilling one or other of those roles.
yeah, no, spot on. It's absolutely a balance thing, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So next up in our AI and tech news, ChatGPT has been really nice to me recently, and I like it, but apparently it's going away again now.
Yeah, we've rolled back. We talked about it last week. The Sycophant is being dialed back down. Actually, I posted this on LinkedIn, and Mark Hinkins commented that he dictated to his sycophant not to be so sycophantic, and that prompt worked. But it's OpenAI, ChatGPT are rolling out those changes now and realizing that we don't like to just be pleased all the time.
I'm going to miss being called a hero for doing
You
nothing.
are a hero, Mal.
Thanks. That's what I needed to hear, man. It's great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. We also have news of an uptick in the usage and trust in AI, which is, yeah, I think it's about time. There's obviously been a lot of focus on the negatives, and I saw a great LinkedIn post recently, and I'll find out and I'll mention who it's from, all about when umbrellas came along, right? People were absolutely anti-umbrellas because they were
Well,
going
how are you
to
going to keep your ice cubes cool in the sun if you don't have a little umbrella in your cocktail?
Dubai, just because that's the first thing that you thought of. Is like you're sitting out on your beach
Keep my Moreno cherry sticky.
with your pina colada. You look like a pina colada guy. You pina colada guy.
That was my accent you just tried there, wasn't it? Pina colada. That was very West Coast.
That's exactly what it was. But yes, so the fear is starting to dissipate and the opportunity is starting to come along as it does with almost every technology over time. So yeah, look, it's good that usage is picking up as well. And I think that there was a really important piece from Simon Ledbetter of Unchained Marketing as well that kind of dropped this week.
Yeah, there's two bits. There's KPMG and Melbourne University did a study, and as you point out off air, I seem to be banging on about the fact that some of these surveys are nearly a third of ChatGPT's time out of date, to put it in context. Whereas this one was at the turn of the year, and it was really showing that the volume of people utilizing it being generative AI, not agentic necessarily, which I'm going to make a forceful point about using agentic as opposed to agent, given how confusing agent is when you're talking to real estate agents and agent AI. But it was at the turn of the year, and what was surprising in that study was the amount of people who were using it discreetly or secretively as if they were going to get caught out. And I think that was the trend we saw in one of the surveys a couple of weeks back, where the use of generative AI was more towards therapy and individual use cases, because corporate businesses were struggling, not struggling necessarily, but being held back in terms of their adoption. And the KPMG in Melbourne study was really insightful on that front. And then Simon Ledbetter has released stage 2 of his survey.
That's
And
right.
the volume of people utilizing AI is up dramatically from a year ago. I think was it in the 80% as opposed to 20s or 30% just in 2024.
Yeah, that's right. And that's daily usage. So yeah, so people are using it so much more now. And yeah, like you say, it does seem to have been almost like a switch between those who are using it surreptitiously and those who are now out and about it. So I think that but the only reason for that happening is people are finding it useful. And that
Mhm.
is the real kind of story, is that actually alongside the kind of confidence and trust side of things, people are actually realizing this can really actually help them do better jobs faster. And that fear factor is starting to tick down as well. So yeah, look, I think it's great news for productivity. It's great news it'll be great news for profitability as well. And I think once we start to use it in earnest, then a lot more people are going to have a lot more ideas about how it can really improve business and life as well. I'm really pleased that it's coming more to the fore.
Yeah, 100%.
Final of our quickfire AI tech news, Claude. So Anthropic's AI assistant Claude can now connect to your world, and you can collect loads and loads of apps through Claude. So this is something that I know you're a big fan of, Matt.
Yeah, so it's a continuation of what I talked about earlier on the Zapier front. So we've got property-specific CRMs such as Res, Street, Rex, Agent OS, who have these Zapier-related integrations. But Claude has now stepped into the same breach. So Claude, being a generative AI product from Anthropic, has released a whole host of integrations that are ready out the box. For example, Mal could sit here and hook up Claude to his Google Calendar and allow it to go off and book in the steak dinner he's going to take us on when I'm next in Cambridge, for example. It's straight in and doing those without needing, I suppose, coders or developers to actually sit down and work this out. So it's another, like Zapier, no code, low code solution, but out the box and directly integrated with Anthropic's Claude, which is really exciting. Again, coming back to that point about being right at the precipice of starting to see some real world solutions for agentic.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the sort of democratizing of coding, where actually, if you've got an idea, instead of having to go and pay £200,000 to somebody to sit in a dark room and code it
I
up,
don't charge that much, everybody. If you want to come speak to me, I'll charge you less than 200,000.
he's always sitting in dark rooms, though, honestly. Can
I
never
am
be.
definitely in a dark room.
But yes, it is. You can actually just think of something and then you can vibe code it away, and it comes now. I know, and just not just because I'm talking to you, Matt. I know AI is not as good as humans. I know that.
No, I like the head tilt with vibe coding. I feel like there's an emoji coming on.
Undoubtedly. But yes, it's starting to allow people to think and to have better ideas, I think. And I think that's going to be a fascinating moment. Alrighty, we are now going to move into our occasional weekly segment called RIP of the Week. Sad music. Matt, who are we mourning this week?
Skype is dead.
Yes, it's true. Now, those who were listening towards the end of last year, it was announced that it was going to die, and now it's dead. I feel we should play the Skype music,
Ringtone.
which we may go and find and overlay in a second. But
Paid for the
yes,
cost.
it's so sad because yes, I grew up with Skype as the amazing, mind-blowing ability to video call people from miles away, and which now we take for granted because we're doing it right now.
Oh,
You are in the next room, aren't you? You're not in
yeah.
Dubai. Oh, you're only pretending. All right. So goodbye, Sky. Thanks very much indeed for all of the random noises and all of the glitches and stuff like that as well. That made it quite annoying sometimes. All
Now
right.
on to the tool of the week. It's not you.
I've been wanting to say that every week. Yes, it is our weekly segment tool of the week. Not me. Certainly not. So, tool of the week this week is you can play around with O3. ChatGPT's O3 has arrived, has dropped a couple of weeks ago. It is very good, really good at reasoning. But if you give it a photo, so say somebody's taking a photo of themselves out, out on holiday, you can show that photo to O3 and you can ask it to try and understand or work out where the photo is taken. Now, we asked one of our experts to trial this, didn't we, Matt?
So before we move on to me confusing it, I did in the article, and we can stick this in the show notes, I did find it amazing that the guy who trialed it called it out for being a liar, and it acknowledged that it was lying. Because when you take a photo, there's a lot of metadata or data for our Australian viewers that can be accessed. And part of that was the guy who posted the article said, don't use this bit of information. And when the ChatGPT started working through it, it clearly had used that information. And when the guy called it out because it was reviewing its nose and displaying what workings it had got, he said, you've used that information. He said, no, I haven't. And then he called it out. He said, oh, yeah, you're right. So it's like, it's starting to lie to us. Where do we go from here?
Oh, yeah, exactly. No, I'm not going to kill you. Are you going to kill us? No, absolutely not.
Comes back to those water cannons on the firefighters, doesn't it?
Fire extinguishers, honest. So yeah, so go have a play. It's really quite interesting and obviously occasionally duplicitous. That's a word.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
Thanks very much. But yes, it's really interesting. Again, if you have a particular need to find out where a particular, I don't know, property is in its street, then actually can you go and get AI to go and find that out as well. So enjoy that if you've got some time to spare. Okay, on to our final segment, which is Weird AI of the Week. And this is Lemon Slice, and it's quite fun. So lemonslice.com, if you go there, then you can upload a photo and then you can get it to start talking. So just as an example, here is an example from the website of Einstein talking.
What would art be like without emotions? It would be empty. What would our lives be like without emotions?
Okay, and so on.
It's not about what we...
Anyway, so there's just loads, and it's very interesting. What did you make of this, Matt?
Just another incredible marketing opportunity, isn't it? The fact that you can bring these things to life, as Einstein was saying there, so quickly.
Yes, here's the Mona Lisa.
What the heck are you smiling about?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, Mal. What did that article say? Going back to the top of our show notes, the infectious grin.
No, we're not going into that, but thank you. Very kind. Alrighty, this has been the Property AI Report. Thank you so much for listening this week. Matt, thanks very much indeed for being there over in Dubai.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Genuinely, it's always a pleasure and it's great fun. So let us leave you now. If you need anything from us, obviously you can reach out via the comments we've got the YouTube up on video, or you can find us through your usual podcast publisher. But we'll be back again next week with plenty more from the paired worlds of property and AI, and we will see you then. Thanks again. All the best. Take care.